Welcome back to the deep dive. Today I want to slow things down a little. We're often rushing, trying to figure out how to optimize everything, but well, today we're wading into some murky waters. We've got this fascinating stack of research here that tackles an emotion I think most of us, myself included, try to run away from at full speed. We're talking about disappointment.
Yeah. It's that feeling, isn't it? The one that just takes the wind right out of your sails. That heavy sinking sensation.
Exactly. And looking at the materials for today, which is this really interesting blend of modern clinical psychology and some very old Eastern philosophy, it seems like the consensus is we're doing disappointment all wrong.
How so?
We treat it like a system failure, like error 404, reality not found. But the argument here is that disappointment isn't a dead end. It's a threshold.
A threshold. That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not a wall, it's a doorway.
Right, but it's a doorway that feels terrible to walk through. It feels awful.
It does.
And that's where I want to start. Because if we just jump straight to, oh, disappointment is good for you, I think everyone listening is going to, roll their eyes and just turn this off.
Let's not do that. Let's sit in the mud for a second. Yeah.
The main text we looked at opens with this visualization that I found really arresting. I think we should walk through that.
Let's do it. So I want you to imagine you're standing on a beach. It's dawn. The light is gray. It's soft. And you're building a sandcastle.
Okay.
But you're not just messing around. You are sculpting. You're an architect. You're making turrets, a drawbridge, a whole moat system. You're pouring all of your focus, your care into this structure.
I can feel that. It's that, that state of flow. You're creating something from nothing.
Exactly. And you step back, wipe your brow, and you feel that swell of pride. I made this. This is mine. It's a manifestation of your will. And then, inevitably, the tide comes in. And it's not angry. It's not malicious. It's just the ocean doing what it does. And wave by wave, the water creeps up. The edges soften, the towers slump.
No collapses.
The moat collapses, and eventually the sand is just smooth again. The castle's gone.
And that is the moment right there. That's the specific feeling in your chest when you watch the water take it. It feels personal.
That is the hook. Even though intellectually you're building on sand and the tide exists, emotionally it feels like a theft.
Yes. It feels like the ocean reached into my pocket and took something that belonged to me. That hollowness. That's what we're digging into today. Because whether it's a job you didn't get or a relationship that fizzled out, that sandcastle moment is universal.
Yeah.
I felt it last week when a project I'd poured months into got shelved. It wasn't just, oh, well, it felt like a piece of me was erased.
And that's what we need to unpack. Because the core idea we're exploring is that the pain of that moment, it doesn't actually come from the water. The water is just water. The pain comes from the expectation that the sand would hold its shape forever.
Okay, but hold on. I have to play skeptic here for a second. Because if the advice is just don't build the sandcastle, that feels bleak.
Right. It feels like apathy.
Yeah. If I'm not supposed to care if the castle washes away, why build it in the first place? Isn't ambition, dependent on expecting a result?
And this is the crucial distinction. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's where most people get stuck. The idea isn't don't build, it's arguing against rigidity.
Rigidity.
Which brings us to a concept from Buddhist psychology that kept popping up. Tanha.
Kanao. Okay, break that down for us.
So it's usually translated as craving or thirst. But in this context, it's more specific. It's a thirst for things to be other than they are. It's a subtle form of violence we commit against the present moment.
A subtle violence.
We insist that reality must follow our script.
The script, that part really hit home for me. This idea that we're all walking around with these invisible screenplays in our lives.
Well, think of the ego as a screenwriter. That's a metaphor one of the psychologists used. Our brain is a prediction machine. Biologically, uncertainty is dangerous, right? So we evolved to build these mental models, these scripts, to try and predict the future.
We crave certainty because certainty feels like safety.
Exactly. So the ego builds these scaffolds, scripts like, if I work hard, I'll get the promotion, or if I'm a good person, bad things won't happen to me.
Or if I find the right partner, I won't feel lonely anymore.
Yes. Big or small. We build these causal links, and there's a great analogy for this. It says, the ego tries to turn the wild river of life into a canal.
A canal.
Yeah, a canal has concrete walls. It flows in a straight line. It's predictable. You know where the water is going. That's what we want our lives to be.
Straight lines and concrete walls. But life is definitely not a canal. It's more like, I don't know, a floodplain.
It is a floodplain. The banks overflow. The course changes. And when the water spills over the walls we built, we panic. We don't just think, oh, the water's rising. We think, something has gone wrong. I've been betrayed.
That's the kicker. Mistaking impermanence for betrayal. I highlighted that line 3 times because I do that constantly. If I put in the effort, I feel like I'm owed the result. And when the universe doesn't pay up, I feel cheated.
And that feeling of being cheated, that is the exhaustion of Tana. It takes so much energy to try and hold back a river with your bare hands.
I imagine the modern world just pours gasoline on this fire.
Oh, absolutely. One article called it the algorithm of envy. We scroll through social media and we see these curated highlights.
The perfect vacation, the perfect career, the perfect sourdough loaf.
Right, and subconsciously our brain treats those images as data points for what is normal. And if your life doesn't look like that, you think you're failing, you think you're broken.
So disappointment in this light isn't just about not getting what you want. It's a reality check.
It's a mirror. Disappointment is a mirror that shows you exactly where you were relying on a script instead of reality. It shows you where you had a hidden contract with the universe.
Hidden contracts. I want to pin that because that sounds really practical. But before we get to the fixing part, let's talk about the fallout. The castle has fallen. We're standing in the wet sand. What happens next is usually panic, right?
Yeah.
Or we just check out.
Right. It's this moment of ruin. And in the silence, right after the wave hits, 2 paths open up. One leads away distraction. We pick up our phone, pour a drink, blame someone.
The path of least resistance. I know it well.
We all do. But the other path, it leads inward. It's the path of staying.
Staying with the pain. That sounds incredibly unappealing.
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But this is where we get into the concept of dukkha.
Okay, another one. What does dukkha mean here?
It's often translated as suffering, which is a big, dramatic word.
Yeah.
But a better translation might be friction. Think of a wheel that's slightly off-center. Every time it turns, there's a bump, a grind.
That thump, thump, thump feeling in your head when things aren't going your way.
Precisely. Dukkha is the friction between the way the world is and the way you're demanding it to be. And this leads to maybe the most practical framework in this whole deep dive, the second arrow.
I've heard this reference before, but I've never really gotten the mechanics of it. Can you break it down?
So the teaching is that in life, we are inevitably struck by arrows. The first arrow is the actual event.
The breakup, the layoff, the stub toe.
Exactly. That arrow is reality. It hurts. You can't dodge all the first arrows. Being human means getting hit by them.
Okay, pain is inevitable. Check.
But then, almost instantly, sometimes within milliseconds, we shoot a second arrow at ourselves.
And what is the second arrow?
The second arrow is the story we tell about the pain. It's the reaction. It's that voice saying, this isn't fair. Why does this always happen to me? I'm such an idiot.
Ah, okay. So the first arrow is, I lost my job. The second arrow is, I am a failure and I'll never work again.
Exactly. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is suffering. And the tragedy is that the second arrow is entirely optional. We're the ones pulling the bowstring.
That is comforting and confronting at the same time. Because it feels so automatic. It doesn't feel like I'm choosing to shoot myself. I feel like I'm just bleeding.
It feels that way because the neural pathways are so well worn. There's a story in the research, a parable, that really helped me see this. It's about a young monk who travels to study with a famous master.
Lay it on us.
So this young monk has a script, a sandcastle. He thinks, I'll arrive, the master will see my potential, give me the secret teachings, and I'll become enlightened.
He's got the whole movie plotted out.
Exactly. So he arrives, he bows, he presents his gifts, and the master just looks at him and goes back to gardening.
The silent treatment. That's rough.
For months, the monk is sweeping floors, chopping wood. He gets zero wisdom. Nothing.
I would be losing my mind.
And he does. His disappointment turns into resentment. I've been scammed. This guy is a fraud. The second arrow is festering. So finally, he packs his bag to storm off.
I'm taking my ball and going home move.
He's storming down this mountain path in the dark, furious, replaying how he was wronged. And in his anger, he doesn't see a large stone on the path. He trips.
Ouch.
Hard, hits the ground, wind knocked out of him. And in that split second of physical shock, that first arrow, his mind just stops. The anger, the story, they all vanish. He's just lying there looking at the moon.
And that's the moment of clarity.
That's it. He realizes the teacher had been teaching him. By giving him nothing, the teacher was showing him that his craving for a certain script for how enlightenment should look was the only thing in his way.
Wow. So he was tripping over his own expectations long before he tripped over the rock.
Exactly. The rock just woke him up to it.
Man, that's relatable. It makes me think about how often I mentally pack my bags when things get hard. If a project at work gets difficult, I check out, I get resentful, I miss the reality because I'm so focused on how it should have gone.
You're busy fighting the river, trying to force the water back into the canal.
So let's get practical. How do we stop? If we're in the middle of that meltdown, how do we put down the arrow?
The advice shifts here from philosophy to very grounded application. The first step is what we mentioned earlier. Identify the hidden contract.
Right. So when you feel that sting of disappointment, you pause. Literally, put a hand on your chest and ask, what was the contract I thought I had signed?
It forces you to look at your assumptions. For example, a contract might be, if I am kind to people, they will never be rude to me.
Oh, I have that one. I have that one signed and notarized in my head.
We all do. Or, if I prepare for this meeting, it will go perfectly. Disappointment is the evidence that the universe never countersigned that contract. You wrote it alone.
That's a tough pill to swallow. It sounds like admitting we have no control.
We are admitting we have no control over the outcome. We can build the castle, but we can't control the tide. But here's the cool part. Once you see the contract, you can tear it up. And that turns the emotion from an enemy into a messenger.
A messenger. I like that reframing.
We tend to treat negative emotions like invaders, but we should listen to them. If you feel anger, the message is usually, a boundary has been crossed. If you feel sadness, the message is, something precious has been lost.
And disappointment. What's it trying to tell us?
Disappointment's message is, you are attached to a version of reality that does not exist.
You are attached to a version of reality that does not exist.
Wow.
It's a status update.
It is. It's your dashboard light coming on.
Yeah.
And once you hear the message, you don't have to be the emotion anymore. There's a linguistic shift suggested that I found incredibly helpful. It's a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy, but blended with mindfulness.
I love a good word hack. What is it?
Stop saying, I am disappointed.
I'd say what instead?
Say, disappointment is here.
Disappointment is here. Sounds a little robotic.
It does at first.
Yeah.
But think about the difference. I am disappointed fuses the feeling to your identity. Disappointment is here, treats it like a weather pattern. You are the sky. The disappointment is just a cloud passing through.
The cloud can be dark and raining, but it isn't the sky.
Exactly. It creates space. And in that space, you have a choice. You can choose not to shoot the second arrow.
So we create space, we stop the bleeding, but the outline promised us some alchemy. How do we turn this lead into gold? Is there a way to actually use this for growth?
This is where we get to the transformation. And for this, we have to look at nature, specifically the lodgepole pine.
The lodgepole pine. I'm guessing this isn't a gardening tip.
No, it's a survival strategy. The lodgepole pine produces these pine cones that are sealed shut with a super hard resin. They can sit on the forest floor for decades, sealed tight.
So how do they reproduce?
They need fire.
Fire.
They're serotinous. They require the intense heat of a forest fire to melt the resin. Only when the forest is burning down do these cones open up and release their seeds.
That is extreme.
It is. But think about the metaphor. To the forest, the fire looks like total destruction. But for the lodgepole pine, it's the only condition under which new life can begin.
So the disappointment is the fire.
The disappointment is the heat that melts the resin. We all have these hard shells. Our ego, our persona, our need to be seen as successful. And sometimes those shells are so thick that nothing new can get out. We stop growing.
We're sealed tight.
Right, and it takes a major letdown to burn away that false self. It burns away the arrogance, the illusion that we're in charge.
And what's left in the ash?
Fertile soil. The seeds of who we actually are, not who we thought we should be.
That changes the goal of life entirely. Because if we spend our whole lives trying to avoid the fire-avoiding disappointment, we're basically ensuring we never open. We stay sealed cones.
We stay safe, but we stay small. The goal isn't happiness, if by happiness you mean no pain. The goal is wholeness. And wholeness includes the charred forest floor. It includes the mud.
This reminds me of the lotus analogy. I know it's a classic, but it hits different after this.
It fits perfectly. The lotus has its roots in the mud, the darkest, murkiest mud. It rises through the water to bloom. But, and this is key, it doesn't reject the mud. It eats it.
It transforms the waste into beauty.
It's the nutrients. Without the mud of disappointment, there is no lotus of wisdom. It's the great paradox. The very thing you are running from is the doorway to the thing you want.
The obstacle is the way.
Exactly. We stand on the shore, looking at the spot where our sandcastle was. And if we can stand the heat, we realize something profound. We were never meant to live in the sandcastle. We were meant to become the sea.
Become the sea. I love that. So maturity isn't about building a stronger fortress. It's about becoming fluid.
Fluidity. A continuous unfolding. You stop trying to be a fixed point in a changing world. You learn to move with the tide.
Okay, so let's bring it home for the listener who's standing in the wreckage right now. Maybe the email just came through, they just heard. What's the invitation?
The invitation is simple, but it requires a lot of courage. The invitation is to do nothing.
Nothing. That goes against every instinct I have.
I know. We want to fix, to distract. But the advice is, don't call the reconstruction crew right away. Just go sit with the disappointment. Feel the burn of the fire. Listen to the silence that comes after the castle falls.
And what are we listening for?
There's a question waiting in that silence. It's the only question that matters in that moment.
What is it?
What is being born in me now?
What is being born in me now?
Not what died or what did I lose, but now that the shell has cracked, what is trying to come out? What part of me is trying to emerge from the ash?
That's a beautiful shift. It turns the grief into a beginning. It gives the pain a purpose.
It does. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it makes it meaningful. And that makes all the difference.
Well, I'm definitely going to be looking at my bad days a little differently after this. I might even thank the tide.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not thank it, but at least I won't yell at it.
That's a start.
Thank you so much for walking us through this. It feels like one of those deep dives I'm going to have to listen to a few times to really let it sink in.
It's a practice, not a destination. It was a pleasure to explore it with you.
And to everyone listening, thank you for diving deep with us. We hope you find some space in the silence today. We'll see you next time.